Honor, you can bow your heads, or we'll just go from there. Heavenly Father, look after us this morning as we go through deliberations over the submissions that have been put through, and may the public's word and voice get through to our discussions, and we will be looking forward to the outcome as we happen. And all these things we do in your precious and loving name. In your loving, amen.
Thank you, Councillor Cockerello. Councillors, just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. It's not live streamed, but it will be put up as well. Everybody's here except Councillor beg your pardon, Councillor Cutforth. So I'm hoping that she will be joining us before. There she is. Fabulous. So we have a full house. No apologies today. And we also have in attendance to our meeting a number of staff members, but also Dale Ovsovsky. And Dale will be here to give us any guidance that we may require for our deliberations meeting today. And that is the purpose of this meeting, is to deliberate on the submissions that we received to our representation review. I think I've done all the housekeeping that I need to do. So we have recommendations on page 1 of the agenda. The first 2 recommendations, one that Council note the 61 valid submissions received on the representation review initial proposal for the 2022 triennial local government elections, and 2, that Council deliberate on submissions relating to the representation review initial proposal for the 2022 triennial local government elections. Thank you, Councillor Cockerello is moving that, and seconder, Councillor Connor. I'm just going to make my screen a little bigger if I can. There we go. Now, just one piece of housekeeping, the chat function, please, we won't be using that through the meeting. And if I can't see you, then I will rely on the hands up, the little emoji. What I might do actually, just to have a little practice for everybody to put your hand up so that I can see that everybody knows where that is, not the hand up, the actual electronic hand. Can you see in the bottom of my little screen, there's a little hand up. It's an emoji and it's on the right-hand side.
You won't be able to see it on the main video, but you will be able to see it on the participant list.
Ah, well, that's not going to be very helpful for me then, is it? Because I can see, I'm beginning to see hands up, but I'm going to change my mind on that and just ask you to literally do your hand up in front of the screen. So thank you, Jane. I can see yours. Shelley, thank you. Nicholas, Phil, Simon, Devon, Trisha, in the sunshine, Anna, Greg Ennis, Carol Peters, Greg Martin, are you able to just show me your, that's it, and Ken, the last one. Councillor Cooper, I'm not sure if you can hear me or if your screen has frozen. I think your screen may have frozen, so I can't see. Can anybody else see Ken's video moving? No, okay. So Ken, I am going to give an exception to you if you can use your... Okay, that's going to be...
What's happening, sorry?
Thank you, Ken.
You froze then, Cheryl. I'll turn my camera off, okay? And I'll use my hands up if I need to get attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. That's clear. And everybody else will use your physical hand, and Councillor Cooper can use his...
Still can't hear anything.
Oh dear. This is going to be a problem. And I think it is a reflection on some poor internet connectivity in the southern part of our district, which is... So, councillors, the 2 recommendations have been moved and seconded, so we can move into the deliberations. I will take the agenda report as having been read. And what I'm proposing that we do is to, before we start doing the deliberations, I would just like Emily or Nicolene or Dale, you can fight among yourselves as to just to give us a bit of background on how we got to and what the next steps are before we do our deliberations. Emily, whether that's you or handing over to Dale, I'll leave that up to you.
This is probably one for me.
Thank you.
Emily here. So where we have got to is we have gone through the process with the consultation, the early consultation in the earlier part of the year, to come to some suggestions for the representation that we have across our district for our councillors and our system of electing our councillors. Obviously, with this particular representation review, we're bringing in the Māori wards, following the vote on Māori wards back in November. And we are looking at how we best represent the people of the district in the makeup of our council. We had the initial proposal was discussed and debated, and on the 24th of June, this council agreed the initial proposal to go out to consultation, which suggested a 13 councillor council, of which 2 were from our Māori wards, 11 from our general electoral wards. The Māori ward was proposed to be a district-wide ward, where our 2 Māori councillors are elected from the whole of the district for the Māori electoral population, and our general ward was split into 5 general wards. The boundaries of some of our existing wards were tweaked, and we combined our Denbigh and Okara wards in our urban area of Whangarei into a single Whangarei urban ward. So that was sort of the outline of the initial proposal. That was then put out as our initial proposal, and we've received consultation on that. I believe we received 63 submissions against our initial proposal, and that is what we've got in the report today for you to deliberate on. This is the deliberations. Following today, we will come back to you next week with a final proposal for you to confirm, which will then go out to the public for comment if they so wish, and this might be where Dale steps in, and depending on whether we have any challenges to that will depend as to whether the proposal goes on to the Electoral Commission. So there are a couple of stipulations in there, and some of the technicalities Dale will comment on, particularly when we're talking about the rules that are on us around how we do the representation, particularly the plus or minus 10%, and what that means in terms of if our final proposal sits outside those rules. But I might let Dale speak to that a little bit. Does that provide that?
Thank you, Emily.
Cool.
Can I
That
just
sums it up nicely. Emily, thank you for that. Yes, if we have something in our final proposal that is outside the plus or minus 10%, then it automatically goes off to the Commission. Equally, if we just have one objection or one appeal, it automatically goes off to the Commission, and they must make their determination by the 10th of April next year.
Thank you, Dale. That's clear. Emily, can I just check? You mentioned that there were 63 submissions. In the recommendation, it talks about 61. Do we need to correct that to 63?
No, that was my apologies, my mistake. It is 61.
Great. So the
there were a couple
recommendation.
of minor corrections to the papers that I sent out by email. The main one being the number that is mentioned in the Whangarei figures, that it's actually a plus 4.2%, not a minus 4.2%. But it's not. The discussions we're having today is around where the border is rather than what the specific number is. Both of those are within tolerance.
Excellent. Thank you, Emily. Councillor Cutforth.
Hi. Hey, I just had a question that's sort of similarly on page 11. Yeah, page 11 under Bream Bay with the 10% plus or minus 10%, the second box, should that be a yes, not a no? because the variance is the same. So I would have thought it fits the 10% plus or minus.
That is correct. Yes, you're right. That should be a yes because it is within the plus or minus 10%.
Okay, sorry to be fiddly, but I just thought I'd be fiddly early. Thank you.
Good catch. Thank you, Tricia.
Thank you, Councillor Cutford. So we've got a motion, it's been moved and seconded that we move into deliberation. So I'm just going to ask that we vote on those motions. Those in favour, please hold up your hand. And thank you, Councillor Cooper, that worked well. So we can now move into the deliberations of the submissions, and the submissions report begins on page 5 of the agenda, or page 8 of the electronic. I'm getting into this now, Councillor Cockerelli, you'll be pleased to see. So the summary of analysis of submissions, you'll see that I'm going to just go through the points one by one. So you'll see submissions unable to be considered as part of the representation review. There's 1.1, the establishment of Māori wards, and then we've got the staff analysis. So I'm going to just check that everybody's in support of the staff analysis, that that there is no change. I mean, there's no recommendation, but that they're just highlighting that in that particular scenario, the establishment of Māori wards is actually can't be debated. So 1.2, again, the choice of electoral system, we have voted for first past the post, and that's not part of the deliberations today. Councillor Deming, I see your hand up there. Okay, you're just agreeing with the staff recommendations, staff analysis. Great. Then we've got 1.3, the electoral population statistics. We've had a submitter that was talking about the electoral roll statistic numbers, and again, that's out of our control. 1.4, the detailed survey to be completed on where Māori are domiciled in the Whangarei District. Again, we're unable to undertake that survey ahead of the representation review. 1.5, the Māori electoral option, one submitted that for Māori on the electoral roll, and again, that's being considered by central government, not an issue that we can be dealing with. 1.6, the only electors on the Māori electoral roll should be allowed to stand as a Māori ward councillor. That is being addressed again by the, that's provided for in terms of the Local Electoral Act, and that is being considered by central government. Councillor Cutford.
Just being slightly pedantic again, but in the commentary, it says one submitter stated that the representatives should be allowed, a candidate who does not have Māori whakapapa. I would have thought their comment was should not be allowed to stand. Do you see what I'm saying? The submitter's comment presumably was that if they haven't got Māori whakapapa, they should not be allowed to stand.
That is correct.
Well spotted, Councillor Cutforth.
All right.
Councillor Reid, you had your hand up there? Okay.
We will have to just check that against the actual submission.
Yes, that's submission number 60 by the look of it. So yeah, if you could check that. So then we move into item 2, questions asked in the submission form. There's an analysis by our staff into the questions that were asked of submitters and their responses. And again, it really is just an analysis of all of the submissions. So thanks to the team for doing all of that for us to make it clear how the people were speaking. Then we've got the staff analysis on page 9 of the agenda, and the staff recommendation is that there's no change to the initial proposal. Now, I'm going to just check that we're all all in agreement with that staff recommendation, because that is an actual recommendation. So can I just have a bit of a show of hands that we all agree with that recommendation? Can you, if you're holding your hand up, can we keep it held up, Councillor Peters? You're the only one I can't see your hand. Thank you. Excellent.
I don't have my hand up either, Cheryl. I don't know if you can see me, but I didn't have my hand up.
And are you in agreement with the staff recommendation that there's no change to the initial proposal as a result of all of those submissions?
Well, I would support that we include at large in our proposal, but I think it's out of scope.
We're getting to those. I'm just going down through the staff recommendations. So I'm still only on page 9 of the staff submissions report. And that was checking that from 2.2, there was no change to the initial proposal. Now we're moving to 2.3. This is not actually a vote, it's just an indication that everybody's happy with the staff recommendation. At some point, some of these will be debated and there may be some changes to the staff recommendations, but hopefully that particular one everybody was happy with. Is that clear? So 2.3, we're now moving into, do you agree with Councillor Holmes?
You just done the, in the submission it says various streets and roads should go into the Bream Bay ward and vice versa. Over past elections, at one stage all of Smeaton's Drive was in the Bream Bay ward and all south of Riwera Road. So that boundary's been fluctuating every election, so it's been pretty fluid all the way through in the last 5 elections. It just keeps changing on that southern boundary, so I wouldn't be too concerned about that.
Councillor Hulse, we are moving now to 2.3. I'm hoping that people can follow what I'm doing, is going through point by point. So up until now, we haven't talked about boundary issues. It's just been about the submissions. Councillor Reid, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Just when we come to discussion on those points, I've just got a little question to ask of Dale.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy, your hand is up.
Thank you. I just had a question for Emily around the fact that a lot of the submissions were anonymous, which I think is interesting, 26 submissions. And I was just wondering, from memory, it's not our usual practice to allow anonymous submissions. So I was just wondering what the rule is around that and whether this is because it's just a draft, the first stage before the next consultation document goes out, and whether people will be able to submit on that anonymously. Thank you.
Through the chair, the submissions forms will have spaces on them for people to put their contact details. We don't, however, and we never have kind of forced people to give us their contact details. It is sort of completely a personal choice whether they want to receive the information back, and so it's never something we have forced any of our submitters to do for any submissions that we have, and so it was something. I don't think it was maybe a bit more unexpected. We had a few more unknowns in this particular submission, but it definitely isn't something we haven't seen before. It may have been the subject matter, or it may have just been people would rather not share their details given how there is a greater awareness around privacy these days.
Thanks, Emily. Councillor Peters.
How do you prevent people putting in, if they're anonymous, how do you prevent them putting in 2 submissions, same issue?
I mean, that's a bit of a judgment call, Councillor, through the chair. It's about looking at the submissions. If we're finding that the same handwriting or the same phrases are used, then we may have a discussion as to whether we think it is a duplicate. We definitely didn't have any where we felt that was the case this time, but we have in the past, made a bit of a judgment call on that. Bottom line is, we probably couldn't stop that if someone really did want to put all submissions in anonymously that were for the same point. But we would probably see the skew in the results that might just flag to us that there might be an issue.
Thanks, Emily. Councillor Cutford.
Just following on from Anna's question and I guess Carol's, if we get to the point where there's an objection and it has to go to the local government commission, would we do that on the basis of an anonymous objection at the end point?
That's possibly a question for Dale. My assumption is we would have to have an objector, so there would have to be someone who objected to our proposal in order for us to go down that route,
rather than it being an anonymous.
But rather than it being an anonymous objection. But I may just hand over to Dale to see if he's got any awareness of that particular technical point. Dale.
Yes, I suspect we'll have to enforce the provision of names and contact details, certainly because local government commission will be in contact with those objectors or appellants. So we'd have to have that information available to them.
Thanks, Dale. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. Can I ask Dale while he's on, is it standard practice for other councils around the area to accept anonymous, whatever these things are, what are they called? Submissions. Yeah.
It's a good question. I can't really give a proper answer because I actually don't know. It's the first time it's sort of been raised as an issue.
Thank you, because to me, it beggars belief that people can write in without putting their name on, and we take it seriously, to be honest. And it must have happened before, and I must have seen it, but I didn't realise.
Yeah, there were 26 of the submissions were anonymous, and I would imagine that many of those came through electronically, which is a perfectly valid form of submission. Councillor Connor.
Thank you. Yeah, with the rest of the recommendations, what will be happening is most likely they will change from the original, which will then mean anybody can object to this as opposed to just the submitters. But if there was no change to it, only the submitters could object to it. That would limit, with that anonymous thing, it would limit the accuracy of those who actually could. Just one other question as well is, with this being anonymously as well, and just for all above board and making sure did any of us make any submissions anonymously? Because I didn't. I just wanted to see if that was out there, because that's another thing that could potentially be in there.
It's a good question. I would trust that elected members choose not to put themselves in the potential scenario where they have made a submission. As you'll recall, when we received the submissions, I made a note that my husband Mike had made a submission, but again, in his personal capacity, he's perfectly entitled to do so, and it didn't give me a conflict of interest. I did declare that, and again, I should note that I think there was somebody else who had a member of their family. Yes, Councillor Collins.
That was me too, but that was just clear. But it could be anonymously, which is the thing that I mean. That is like, well, I didn't put my name on it. It's not me.
Mm-hmm. It is I guess, a scenario of trust, and I would hope that nobody has breached that trust. So moving down to 2.3. which we are now moving into. Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, I don't want to labour the point, but I think it's actually really important that that submissions aren't anonymous. I think that you need to be counted, and in a formal. And I know that those were just submissions on the initial proposal. But just going forward, it's really made me think about other consultations that we've run. And I don't ever remember, for example, in our long-term plan processes or annual plans or just other things that we've consulted on, there ever being, that many anonymous submissions. So I think it's something we need to be really conscious of, because, and I would like staff to come back at a later date with just some guidance and what are the rules around that. I just really don't like it. Imagine if you had 100% of your submissions anonymous and you don't know, who are these people? Where are they from? I think it's just a very, very important, something very important that we need to be aware of and we need to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Golightly, then Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to raise the same point. It actually does make me very uncomfortable as well. So some feedback around that. And I do think going forward, we've really got to look at that. But I think especially for this one, because it's such a contentious issue, I'd just sort of like some more guidance around it as well. Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I did notice quite a number of them were anonymous, but then a lot of them had put their email address on the forms as well. I'm just sort of wondering whether that had been taken into account by the staff when they went through them.
Emily, are you able to respond to that?
We just how we translated the information from the sheets into our kind of analysis world, we didn't, or to the best of my knowledge, we sort of didn't necessarily focus on the emails. We just focused on what the name was. So so there is possibly a discrepancy in that.
And you'll just check for us the legality of calling for submissions to this process and enabling people to be anonymous. I do recall that there was a submitter who was shocked to see their personal details in a council agenda. So there's two sides to that scenario as well. That we've got, some people under the privacy, they didn't realise that when they made a submission and put their contact details into their submission, that they would become part of a public record. So interesting two sides to that particular coin. Councillor Connor.
I'll bring more back.
I just wanted to make a mention on that one as well, is that wouldn't that be possible for the council staff to have that information of their details, maybe have their name on there, but not process their phone number and email address, which is, I'm just referring to that one because they complained it to me and I directed it on to you. Because they thought that those details would have kind of stayed away just for privacy reasons, whereas obviously the name would be one thing to be putting it out there, but it's the contact details would be another thing. I mean, usually you take information, you stick it out there, but it's it was just a complaint. I just thought I'd go a bit further on it.
I think if you look back on all of our submissions to long-term plans and every other submission process that we've had, there are personal details in all of those, and there is an understanding that when you're communicating with the organisation, that we take privacy seriously. But if people are not wanting their private details included, they would need to make that very clear. So Emily, I do know I spoke with you about that particular scenario and you assured me that we are not breaching any privacy.
No, but we are conscious that information is changing, and so we are going to be really looking at that fairly shortly. Actually, we've got a little team coming together to just look at exactly that issue, and that will include all this anonymous submissions as well as details on what gets published.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Cooper, then Councillor Connor.
Thank you. It's a great discussion. I think it's very important. One of the notes that I'd like people to note is that when you make a submission and the information and your contact details are on there, as a councillor, it is actually sometimes very helpful to be able to ring those people up and gain greater clarity around their submission and understanding of why they're submitting. So personally, we are a public outfit. If people can't put their name to it, I find it very difficult to take them seriously. Thank you.
And Councillor Connor?
Mine was just a thought, is it possible to have like a little tick box to say, for details wise, to say, I don't want my details publicly, but to be able to keep them for staff?
I'm sure that staff would consider that as a good suggestion. So I want to move on. And the staff recommendation on page 11 for the Bream Bay ward, the staff recommendation, there are two aspects to that. The recommendation is that the initial proposal be changed to include Toi Toi Road at the south of the city in the proposed Whangarei Urban General Ward. There are 4 bullet points for the reasons, and 2, that the final proposal include that move to move the southern part of Cemetery Road, north of State Highway 15 to the west of the city into the Maungakahia Mangatapiri Ward, General Ward, from the existing Bream Bay ward. So there are some proposed changes there. So I'm sorry, it's hard for me to, thank you for holding your hands up. I've got to look at my screen and then look back at the other screen. I now see, are we wanting to debate this, or are you just indicating that you're supporting the staff recommendation?
Mine's just a question.
Councillor Connor, question?
Why supporting it?
My question was just, it's in regards to the next one. The next one says the details of where the other submitters are, like they're in the other ward. However, the other one, this particular one, says it doesn't actually state where the other people have submitted it from. It was just a little thing that might be useful for further ones, because obviously there's boundaries between 2, but it only states 1, whereas the next one, which is the Maungakahia one, states both places, both wards. I just thought it would be, is it possible to have that in a next one, or if an updated, just to be clear?
You've completely confused me.
Okay, sorry. So on the second point in 2.3, it says the 16 submitters did not agree with the ward boundary change to the existing. 3 of these submitters are in this existing ward boundary. But if we go to page 12 or 14, it does show that the other ones are in the existing Denby ward, as opposed to just who knows where they are. That's quite clear, whereas this one here wasn't clear, and I was just wondering if they were from the Okara ward or the Denby ward or the Powder Bay ward. Blah blah blah. It's just, yeah.
My response to that, and I'll just check this with Emily and Dale, is actually it's irrelevant where people live within the ward, within the district. The feedback on position of ward boundaries or whatever can apply for people wherever they live in the district. So I think the analysis, as you say, it's showing that, you know, where people were living, but the quality of the submission makes no difference as to where people were living when they made the submission.
Well, if it's irrelevant, then why put the include there in this ward boundary in the first place?
Irrelevant is probably not the correct term, but it shouldn't factor into whether or not a submission, we should have more weight for somebody who lives in the ward or out of the ward.
But if they're about to be moved into the ward from the other ward, that could be awaited in that submission.
Your Worship, it makes no material difference.
Emily, just checking to make sure that we are not doing anything. Or Dale, you may give us some guidance here.
Through the chair, I'll probably defer this one to Dale.
The councillor made the comment that it makes no material difference. Is quite correct. It's really just any additional information that the councillors may seek, but in the overall process, it makes no difference whatsoever.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you. So the staff recommendations, there were two, which involved the moving of the boundaries for the Whangarei urban ward and for the existing Green Bay ward in Mangakahi and Mangatapere. Can I have an indication if there's any change to, if we're supporting the staff recommendation in this situation? I'm waiting on hands from councillors Benny, Martin. Can you keep holding them up? I'm sorry, I've got to scan the whole screen. Thank you. I can see everybody except councillor Benny. You're not supporting that? But the majority are. So we'll keep that staff recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Cooper, for your... So now we've got 2.4. The ward boundary changes to the existing Hikurangi coastal ward, and there's quite a lot of analysis of this particular one. This was of great interest, and the staff recommendation begins at the bottom of page 14 of the printed agenda, and there's one recommendation with lots and lots of bullet points, and it's mainly around that the initial proposal be changed to include the Springs Flat area, including Taylor Road, Rose Place, Great North Road, Winger Crescent, Springs Flat Road, and all roads to the west of Great North Road down to Station Road, including the beginning of Pipiwai Road, Hiko Road, Waipanga Road, Ornoki Lane, Northcroft Drive, Oakwood Rise, east side of Dip Road, Georgia Lane, Brickworks Lane, Whitelaw Place, goodness me, I shouldn't have started, Butler Place, Tustian Way, Lillian Road, west side of Kama Road to Station Road, Ford Avenue, Moiho Road, Tuatara Drive, Crawford Crescent, ET Street and Wentworth Place into the proposed Whangarei Urban General Ward. Now, bearing in mind that that will have an impact on the plus or minus 10%, am I correct in that?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks, Emily.
Very clearly.
So for 2.4, can I have an indication that we're supporting that staff recommendation? Or Councillor Benny, did you wish to speak?
Yes, please, if I could. So this is where I've got a bit of an issue with our system, and I've given this a lot of thought, and I supported this initially. But I look at these roads, and I mean, there's no way that most of these roads are in Kama. There's no way that they purely to fit the mathematical equation that the Kamo people vote for a Hikurangi ward member, and it just doesn't make sense. And I've changed my mind considerably on this. And I think if this is the system we have to go to, we have to fit these places into the system, then the system's wrong. And I've given this quite a bit of thought. And so that's the reason I was opposed to the previous one, and it's the reason I'm opposing the next one as well. In that, yeah, I mean, clearly these places are not in the Hikurangi ward. They are Kamo. You know, it's right alongside the Kamo Rec, and all the roads around it, Station Road. They are not in the Hikurangi rural area, and so I can't support them being part of that. So I just want to make that point.
Thank you, Councillor Benny. I'm going to help you here and help you be able to support the staff recommendation, because what the recommendation is to take all of those roads out of the Hikurangi Coastal Ward and bring them back into the Whangarei Urban Ward to enable, and what that will do is trigger the plus or minus 10%. It will no longer comply, but we are recommending that those streets from Kamo are included in the Whangarei Urban Ward and taken out of the Hikurangi Coastal Ward. And does that make sense?
Unfortunately, it does. So yeah, okay. Well, yeah. This is the problem with my reading on this phone. I struggle to read this. So do we say in here which areas would stay in Hikurangi?
all of the other, it's really only this mesh block, I guess, that covers or mesh blocks. The rest of the Hikurangi Coastal Ward is unchanged from the initial proposal, but we are looking at changing the initial proposal so the final proposal will reflect the changes that we're wanting, which logically, I agree with you, these areas belong in the urban ward. Now, I'm seeing many hands up, and I missed the sequence of people wanting to speak, but I see Councillor Martin, Councillor Murphy, Councillor Peters, Councillor Connop. I'm picking that you wish to all speak. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, just a point. Gavin's partly right, but if you have a look at the initial proposal, we have to include Springs Flat, used to be in the Hikurangi Coastal Ward till the last election, Taylor Road, Rose Place, Great North Road, Whangarei Crescent, Springs Flat Road, all the roads west of Great North Road, Pipiwai Road, Hiko Road, Waipanga Road, Oniki Lane, Northcroft, Oakwood, east of Dip Road, Georgia Lane Brickworks. They were all in the Hikurangi Coastal Ward until the last election. And there is a lot of synergy between those people and the people who live across the road and further up from there. Used to have both sides of 3 Mile Bush Road were in the Hikurangi Coastal Ward, but some of that's gone over the other way. So wherever the line is, there's going to be some changes. And the fact that this is a mesh block and it takes in those 3 or 4 streets, Sunhead House and Crawford Crescent, it's not like they're a long way from anywhere. And we are on RD1 Karma, the people who live in Mataral and the people who live between here and town. So there is synergies. Everything we do, all our shopping, our chemists, the doctors, everything is in Karma. The butcher, the Foursquare, everything. Mitre 10, everything that we deal at, farmlands, the whole lot are all in Karma. So there's huge synergies. And the fact that it needs a few more streets to keep us within the plus or minus barrier, I think is the way. And I think we should stick with the original recommendation.
Councillor Martin, you would need to be moving that as an amendment to the staff recommendation, and we could take that specifically and incorporate that into the final recommendation if it's followed. So are you moving that we stick with the initial proposal boundaries?
Yes, I am. I'd like to move that.
Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Hulse is seconding. So Councillor Martin has moved and Councillor Hulse is seconding that we stick with the initial proposal. So open for debate.
Yeah, just
Councillor Hulse.
It goes back to the previous comment I made about the Bream Bay Ward. Every election, and Councillor Martin's pointed out quite strongly, the same as I did previously, that every election the boundary changes just for plus or minus 10%. And I think Councillor Martin's made it quite clear about the synergies and that. So it's all this is just for one election. To get people elected, it's just the people on those boundaries. I know even in between Denby and Okara, there's always been a debate about where they should be, and it's a pity we've got to go through such a lengthy process to determine that. But I think that the biggest problem we've got is sticking to that 10%. I think that's the biggest problem we've got, but that's what we've got to do. So, but I support Councillor Martin on this one.
Councillors, I will be not supporting the amendment, given that I attended some meetings in the what used to be Denby Ward, and I guess I'm wearing my old Denby Ward councillor hat, and recognising that many of these people, their community of interest is in the city within the urban boundaries. So I agree with the staff recommendations that those areas, the people who are living there were quite clear in the fact that their community of interest is more into the urban area, and because of the mesh blocks, we needed to put out a proposal that met the criteria, and that was the frustrating part of it. So I'm definitely supporting the initial staff recommendation. I see Councillor Murphy, then Councillor Connor.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, I see Councillor Martin's point, but I won't be supporting his amendment. I think it just proves that the ward system is irrelevant. But if you're going to go with the ward system, then I think that Carmore does belong in the urban ward. But it just proves the point, I think, that these ward boundaries really don't mean a lot. Hopefully people whose house is, you know, if you're on the middle of a boundary, you don't have a personality crisis. I think if you know, once you're elected, as we all know, and we've said so many times, we are elected to represent the district as a whole. And so really, to me, the communities of interest are spread across our district. You know, whether you're a young person, it's irrelevant. The wards are only one way to divide our district. And but I think that if, you know, obviously the majority felt that we should stick with the ward system, and so I think that, I mean, I agree, Carmore should remain in the urban ward. But we should go at large.
Councillor Connor.
Councillor Murphy beat me to it. Yeah, I was like, well, this would stop a lot of arguments if we did go at large, because we are also or to support it anyway. One question I had that I had my hand up for, just for clarification of ease of use for these type of things. I know it's not the full document, but just to make it easier for people, that if there's a whole lot of jumble of words where there's an actual line on a map, it might be clearer to us so that we can actually see what the change might actually mean. But yes, it's one of those things that, like, you're already getting these people saying, oh, there's this people in that one, there's that people in that one, but we're all Whangarei, we're all the one location. And it stops, as Councillor Murphy just said, the stopping and the chopping and changing of where we actually sit. And yeah, it's just, unfortunately, that wasn't in the proposal yet. In the end of this document, they people did bring that in, even though it wasn't specifically there.
Councillor Cook, Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship. At Jekyll and Hyde here, we've got that plus minus 10%. So I'm just wondering, it's probably a question for Dale and the staff. If we were to stretch that to the limit to reduce the likelihood of shifting streets from one side of the map to the other, how we could reduce the effect of any change for the householders, the ratepayers.
Dale, are you able to respond to that?
Yes. There are three things we have to look at, which is outlined in the report, and that's identify our communities of interest and provide effective representation to those communities of interest, as well as fair to those communities, which is that plus or minus 10% rule. There's sort of like a pecking order of those three, and the highest priority, or the highest order, is actually identifying your communities of interest. And legislation actually permits us to go outside that plus or minus 10%. I'm just reading it now. Compliance with the plus or minus 10% would limit effective representation of communities of interest by dividing a community of interest between wards or subdivisions. So what they're saying is we shouldn't really divide a community of interest just to comply with the plus or minus 10%. So there is a little bit of leeway to go outside of that plus or minus 10%, provided we can demonstrate that by compliance, we're actually dividing a community. So I'm quite comfortable if we go outside that range, as long as we've got good rationale. And I think we have in these two instances, actually.
Thank you, Dale. And that got 2 thumbs up, Dale. Well done from Councillor Reid. So anybody else wish to speak to the amendment Councillor Martin, you have spoken to the amendment.
I just have a question. Is that one entire mesh block the staff recommendation? Because right up to Oakwood Rise and those places, they were all in the rural area when we were when we had the council. That's where the boundary was. And there's still cows grazing in there and all sorts. So does it need those other roads? Is there 2 mesh blocks or 1 mesh block there? That's my question.
Emily, are you able to respond to that?
I don't know the exact number of mesh blocks. We've treated it as one piece, but obviously the boundary could be anywhere within that block. There was the submission, as you heard at the submissions hearing, that came from the Carmo community group. They actually suggested a boundary that was along Dip Road. So it sort of put half of that area into the urban area and kept half in the Hikurangi side. So there are options within that. We don't have to treat it all as either in or out if you wanted to split it. Does that help?
No.
So we
it's
could,
very difficult when we don't have a visual on the mapping of the mesh blocks. It makes it actually very hard for us. This is one of the disadvantages of being outside of a room together, because you probably would have been able to point to it on a map.
Exactly, I could have shown you on the map. So there was a suggestion, and I can try and talk you through it, which was keeping the springs, the piece along the State Highway 1 and the very top of the Carmo area, the Springs Flat Winger Crescent, actually leave that piece in Hikurangi. And where there is the sports park, that corner be the boundary between Hikurangi and Denby.
So my question, Emily, would be around the community of interest. I would personally, my memory and recollection of the people who are living in that area would identify as a community of interest the urban ward as opposed to, so I would still stick with the...
Yeah, and again, that's what the staff call was. When we looked at it, we decided it was, it seemed to be fairer to include them because it is a community of interest. It is very much their area of where they would be involved. And again, as we've seen through some of the submissions, it is very much everything south of the State Highway into that Carmo area feels they are Carmo or urban.
Thank you, Emily. Councillor Deeming.
Your Worship, would it be possible to review that boundary week if I were to move an amendment that we did that?
Through the chair, it would be a challenge because the question is always going to be, where do you put the boundary? So we could, if councillors had a very definitive proposal that we could then have a discussion and agreement, get an agreement on, that would be an option. I don't know.
That would be my suggestion in that area. I'm surprised actually that councillors haven't already done that. Perhaps lockdowns intervened. Do you actually need an amendment in order to consider that? Because I don't know the area particularly at all, so I struggle to actually know which way to go.
I'm going to need some clear guidance here because this is we're going to start getting, if I've got councillors who are wanting to tweak individual roads from the staff recommendation, then we're going to end up in a bugger's muddle, to be honest. So we're either going to go with the staff recommendation or a very clear direction, and Councillor Martin his motion is his amendment was to include the initial proposal outline as it was. So I want to stick with either the staff recommendation or the initial proposal. But I do realise that removes the ability for us to move. I see you, Councillor Murphy. That does make it difficult for us in this COVID scenario. I see Councillor Cockerello has had his hand up for a long time. Then I'll come to Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Worship. My question more relates to the representative review. When you have a look at the sheet that was sent out, it shows a yellow, it shows a white. I'm just trying to.
Sorry, your audio is not. Councillor Cockerello, I'm sorry to interrupt. We can't hear you. You'll either need to speak at the snail's pace so that one voice, one word at a time, but we missed all of that. Can you try again, please?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I've just taken the picture off to make it a little bit easier. The representation picture that got sent out yesterday, has everyone got an access to that? Because there's a yellow border which is shown on that rather than a white border. I'm wondering if the staff can actually show that.
Give me a moment.
See that screen, Emily? Thank you.
I'll just share my screen. This is the area we're talking about at the moment. Is that clear for people?
You might want to zoom in a little closer. That's better. Thank you.
So this is the Carmo lights. And this is the roundabout with the sports park here.
So what we're looking at is the initial proposal had the areas of orange north of the white line were to be included in the Whangarei Coastal Ward. And what the staff recommendation is based on submissions from community of interest, the people in those areas wish to be included in the Whangarei urban ward.
That's correct. So the staff recommendation is that we move all of the orange back into the urban ward, which is the line, the white line.
And those areas are currently in the Denby ward, is that correct?
Yes. So that the orange actually is the underlying existing Denby ward, and the purple is the underlying existing Hikurangi ward.
Thank you.
Hikurangi and Coastal.
Can I get back to see my elected members?
Yep.
Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. Just checking. We will have time, won't we, to to really look at that more closely, like Councillor Deeming was saying. Could we kind of put it off until later when we're in chambers and we can have a look at a map? But I mean, this isn't the final document that we're adopting, so we have got time. It's only a draft.
So we are, the timeline is that next Tuesday, the 7th of September, we bring the final proposal to you for confirmation. So we have a week from
That's
today.
right, but I mean, that draft is still only a draft. You know, it's not the final. So there's still time going forward.
Councillor Murphy, today we are deliberating on the submissions and we are looking at the staff recommendations. And yes, the final proposal, when it comes to our council agenda on the 7th, there will be an opportunity for us to look at the map and make any final adjustments at that council meeting. But we're hoping that today the feedback from elected members is sufficient for the staff to be able to lay out the final proposal, hopefully as close as it's going to be to agree to it on the 7th. Is that clear? Cool. So, Councillor Cutforth.
Thank you, Your Worship. I mean, I just think we go with what the wishes of people who live in Kamo and are part of that Kamo community want, and they were quite clearly gobsmacked, I think, to find that they might end up in a rural ward. And I agree with some of the other councillors that if we're going to have a ward system, then clearly these people in a rural urban split, then these people clearly live in an urban area and relate to Kamo. I mean, it beggars belief that the old Kamo Borough Council building might actually end up in Hikurangi. I mean, it demonstrates how ridiculous it is. And also just from a personal view, having done stats work along that area and out along Springs Flat and into Dip Road, those people clearly identify themselves as part of the urban periphery, certainly, but urban area and relate to Kamo. So I think we just have to go with the submissions of what people in those areas want. And if we're going to have a ward system, rural urban split, then these people clearly see themselves as part of the urban area and part of that Kamo community. I think there's no question about it. I mean, it's ridiculous, really, that we're having to, as Councillor Benny says, that we're trying to sort of shoehorn things. But shoehorn we will, and we're not going to split the Kamo community because of this.
Thanks, Councillor Cutforth. I see Councillor Peters, Innes and Connor. Councillor Peters.
I agree with Councillor Cutforth. I do think that the submissions reflected this requirement to change the boundary and include these people in the urban ward.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Innes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm looking at the submissions. I'm also looking at the key criteria there of community of interest. There are going to be on the margins issues. I tend to probably reflect what submissions are saying. I'm not really familiar with the area, but it seems to me that an urban general ward are really the interests of Kamo. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Innes. Councillor Connor.
Mine was just the point for this whole meeting was that originally you said that this is just being recorded and will be put up later. It is being live streamed, just for FYI for everyone.
Thank you. So, councillors, we've got the motion that had been moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Hulse. I'm going to put that. Those in favour, please show your hands. I've got Councillor Martin and Hulse. Those against, please hold up your hands. I've got screens frozen from Councillors Cutforth and Peters and Reid, unfortunately. So if you could just keep holding up. I can see everybody except Councillors Peters and Reid. Can anybody see them?
Reid voted for the last one.
But yeah, okay. So that is lost. And I saw Councillor Cooper had his hand up. So that is lost. So we'll be going with the staff recommendation in that regard. So now we're moving to item 2.5, which is on page 15 of the agenda, with the ward boundary changes to the existing Mangakahia Mangatapiri ward and the staff analysis. And the recommendation is on page 18. with the initial proposal being changed to include Redwood Rise, Westwood Lane, Taikol Street, Hihi Rise, Tieki Place, Kokako Place, Pukanui Road, Highfield Way, Pohutukawa Place, Tealmere Grove, Heron Place, Barge Lane, Beaumont Court and Rockwell Place, and the northern end of Puriri Park Road, Sutton Close, Tui Crescent, the northern end of Kiwi Avenue, Larua's Place, Kawhai Park Road, Clarkson Crescent, Rosella Place, into the Mankahia Mangatapiti ward from the existing Okara ward and into the proposed Whangarei urban general ward. So moving that lot into the Whangarei urban general ward. That's the staff recommendation. And then the final proposal, I'm sorry that this is a little confusing. The final proposal also to include the proposal to remove the southern part of Cemetery Road, north of State Highway 15 to the west of the city into the Mankahia Mangatapiti General Ward from the existing Green Bay Ward. So there are some quite significant changes. And if you look at the map that was sent out yesterday, that is helpful also to show the proposed changes in that area. Do we need the map up? Would that help people to see that, or is it clear? Now, this might be my internet that's causing the problem.
Would you like the map up, or?
I've got frozen screens everywhere, so I'm not quite sure. Can you see whether the councillors are wanting to see the map?
No one has hands up. People are looking just generally happy.
Okay, so the staff recommendation is that there are those changes to the affecting both the Bream Bay ward and the Mankahia Mangatapiti ward, and moving those people into the proposed new urban general ward. Is anybody wishing to make any changes to that staff recommendation? Councillor Reid.
Just a comment, Your Worship. It doesn't really worry me too much where the boundaries lie, as long as it fits in the plus minus 10%. And just in case Gavin loses a little bit up in Kamo to look after, he can have a little bit in Manu to look after.
Councillor Reid, my understanding is that if with these changes, it will be outside of the plus or minus 10% rule. But again, it is a rationalisation of the communities of interest for those people who are living in the more urban areas of Maunu and into the so adjusting the Bream Bay with the where are we? The Cemetery Road people moving into the Mankahia Mangatapiti ward. I'm sorry, people. I'm having very slow responses from people, so I'm not hearing or seeing any particular desire to change the staff recommendation, so we'll redraw that one. Cool. I'll move on to 2.6, which is agreeing with retaining the existing Whangarei Heads ward, and the staff analysis and the recommendation is that there's no change to the initial proposal. Are we comfortable with that? I'm taking that as a yes. So 2.7, agreeing with combining the existing Okara and Denby wards into one Whangarei urban general ward. There were a significant number of submitters to this with staff analysis and noting that the plus or minus 10% rule is not complied with in this proposal, but there are very good recommendations and reasons for doing that. So I'm just checking that the initial proposal be changed to include Toi Toi Road at the south of the city in the proposed Whangarei Urban Ward, that we combine the existing Okara and Denby into Whangarei Urban General Ward, and including those changes that we agreed to before with the north end of Carmel and the changes with Mangatapere, Mangakahia and Bream Bay. So pretty much all wards except Whangarei Heads Ward are impacted by this around the edges. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about the Nungaru Ford issue, which is an interesting one because I do know a lot of people who live down there, and their children all do come to Nungaru School. So it's interesting, that question of where their community of interest lies, and I think it does lie in the Hikurangi Coastal Ward. I mean, that hasn't come through strongly at all in the submissions, and I see also that the tribal boundaries are included in the Whangarei Heads Ward. But I just wanted to raise that as a point of interest, because I think, personally, I would think it would make sense to move that into the Hikurangi Coastal Ward. But obviously, maybe people who live down there are a bit more ambivalent. I just thought I'd raise that as something of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. I do recall in some of the initial proposals that we were looking at, the Whangarei Heads Ward boundary had sort of dropped to the southern and incorporated Ford Road in the north, but that's not the layout, and we didn't receive, as you say, a significant number of submissions for that change. Councillor Collett?
Yeah, so in the past, this is one of those places that I have heard from somebody. They didn't submit on the plan on this proposal, but they have mentioned that they don't feel part of Whangarei Heads Ward. They do feel part of Nungaru, and she lives on Nungaru Ford Road too. So I just wanted to throw that one in there because that is a historic piece of information that has been put forward.
Thank you, Councillor Collett. Councillor Martin.
Yes, it's interesting, this areas of interest, because Glenbervie School is in the Hikurangi Coastal Ward, yet all the other side of the road is in the Whangarei Heads Ward. I've had a lot of people asking, why is that? Because we clearly are an area of interest, and also all the way along Nungaru, all the children down Nungaru Ford Road, and I've been out there numerous times. All the way down there, because they just consider themselves as the Hikurangi Coastal Ward. So, and I actually know some people quite well down there. A good Hikurangi rugby supporters, so obviously I know them well. But that whole area there is one that should have been looked at, and it would certainly help with the percentages back and forwards.
Yeah, understanding this representative model, when we do separate it into wards, creates some of those anomalies between communities of interest. However, as has been pointed out before, when we are councillors for the whole of the district, we swear the oath. So, that takes it into account as well. Councillor Innes, I see your hand up.
Thank you. I've got sort of reception problems here as well. I was just, again, it's an area on the margin, but just picking up on Councillor Martin's point is that I've attended the AGMs across in Glenbervie Hall, and I've actually had to chair those. So that community approached me to go and chair those meetings. It's just a question of access, I think, to councillors as well on those margins. If councillors are accessible, and I think that's one of the pluses of the ward system, then it enables those anomalies to be rectified a bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Innes. Councillor Coccarello.
Thank you, Worship. I was just raising a question here. When we've done through this submission process, are our previous submitters, as in like the previous submitters that we've had, get included within discussion? Because there was previous submissions past years, which are from the Whangarei Ford Road, who have made submissions about being in the area and what area they feel that they'd be in.
I think as a matter of record, if there were no submissions to our process, then it won't be recorded in the narrative of the analysis of the submissions that we received. But I agree, there have been times when we in our experience we're reflecting the comments that we may have heard from our people in previous either representation reviews or just in general conversations. So I think we just take those into account with all of our analysis of the scenario and make the best decisions based on our experience and judgment. So any further discussion around the Whangarei Urban General Ward? And there's no desire to change the staff recommendation. So let's move on to 2.8. Do you agree with the establishment of a single Whangarei District Māori ward comprising the whole area of our district?
Excuse me, Your Worship.
Yes.
Just did we get an agreement on the Bream Bay ward back at the beginning?
What number, Emily?
I'm just checking it now. 2.3, which was the Bream Bay, the Toitoi Road, the one prior to the Hikarangi Coastal. On page 11.
Let's make that easy and just agree.
I
have recorded a tick by support for the staff recommendation, accepting for Councillor Benny and to come back and debate.
Excellent. Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Carolyn. Sorry, I'd missed that one.
Thanks for the clarification. So we were back at 2.8, which is the Whangarei District Māori ward comprising the whole area of our district. The staff recommendation is that there's no change to the initial proposal. There is some analysis of the statistics and the submitters that presented. I'm very happy with the staff recommendation with no change. Is there any desire to disagree with that one? Cool. So 2.9. Oh, sorry, Councillor Cockerillo.
Yeah, Your Worship, I just wanted to add that when we went through the discussion process, I wasn't in favour of having a one Māori ward the whole way across, but it was pressure put by some papu. The best way that they wanted to deal with their people, and again, it's not the way I would deal with it. It's what they came across and said that they wanted to deal with. And during the submission process, it was also said the same thing.
Thank you, Councillor Cockerillo. Councillor Peters.
Sorry, I've answered my own question.
Excellent. Well done, you. So we'll move on to 2.9, which is, do you agree that no community boards be established? The staff recommendation is no change to the initial proposal. And what a perfect time to have a frozen screen. Oh, everybody's beginning to move again. So is there any variance to that? Councillor Peters?
I'm not sure whether this needs to be revisited after we deal with the next item.
I'm dealing with them in the sequence that they are being they're coming up. So I'm
going to support or propose that we consider one ward, one district-wide ward, and wouldn't the consideration of community boards be linked to that if
that's quite a significant departure from the proposal that we put out and the submissions that we've received. Dale, can you give me some guidance on whether that is a process that we could potentially follow?
Any changes made proposal must reflect submissions received. So you can't bring anything that has not been previously consulted on under the initial proposal. So you can only action from or make changes to the final proposal as a result of submissions received.
There have been submissions received on this issue.
So therefore, yes, you can reconsider it if it's resulting from submissions received.
So, Councillor Peters, you would need to move a motion and be very clear about what it is that you're moving.
Sorry, I'm not clear because it is dependent on the vote on the next issue.
I see what you're saying. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, with the community board's staff recommendation about no change to the initial proposal, I'm just going to take it that we support that at the moment, but I see your point around if we had one general ward, one Māori ward, then that does bring into the, it would make sense to then have community boards. So I think, can I just, if you indulge me, and we'll go through that there's no change to the staff recommendation about community boards being established for now. And that looks like everybody's happy with that. And now we have the other issues that are raised through submissions. And 3.1 is having one general ward and one Māori ward with at-large voting. And clearly there were submissions on that, but the staff recommendation is that no change to the initial proposal. This is where, Councillor Peters, you would be able to and perhaps I can seek some staff guidance on the crafting. We've had enough time now to sort of think about what a good motion would be to be able to debate.
So this was debated before and lost. I'm sort of putting this to the staff if they could propose one that perhaps which may be more successful, which has 10 general councillors and 2 Māori councillors and 1 mayor. The advantages in that I could debate later.
Councillor Cockerell, you've got your hand up.
Yes, Your Worship. I just wanted to bring into question here, if we vary anything from what we originally submitted out there vastly by going at large, will we not require to reconsult and redo submission process?
Dale, you'll be able to help us with that.
The process going forward, of course, is that if you change your initial proposal. You put out a public notice of your final proposal, and then there's a further period of objection or appeal of 1 month. So if you make changes, then anyone, of course, can lodge an objection. So there is that formal process. And as I said earlier, if we just get one, the whole matter goes off to the Local Government Commission, who then determines on behalf of council.
So, Councillor Peters, you're proposing that we have a council made up of 10 general councillors, 2 minor councillors and 1 mayor. Carolyn's saying she's working on a resolution. You were also going to recommend that we introduce community boards. I think part of the difficulty with that is that we haven't, I don't think your thinking is mature enough to decide how many community boards or where they would be or what the boundaries would be. That makes it difficult. So are you going to leave it silent on community boards and just go with a council of 13?
Yes.
Okay. The staff are working on a recommendation, so I'll go to Councillor Cooper.
Just a point of clarification. Thank you for Dale. We have already made status quo that we put out. So am I correct in assuming that we will be going back for a reconsultation anyway? Or have I?
Sorry, your question broke up there. Could you just repeat that, please?
During today, we've made some changes on the proposal that would changes to the ward boundary. So we will go for consultation in any event anyway. So that's I just want to try and clarify that. Emily, did it help or did that?
Sorry, you
come
up
through
again,
okay?
but I think I got the gist of what you were saying, but you did break up. Because we're making changes, as well as we're going outside the plus or minus 10%, no matter what happens, the process must still continue with the next round of public consultation, which is your objection appeal period. So yes, we still have to do that next round of consultation. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I believe it does. Thank you.
So, team, I've had a request from staff to adjourn our meeting so that they can get some technical advice on the correct motion that we'll come back with. So, I'm going to propose that we have that we adjourn until 10:45. So that gives us an 18-minute break, according to my calculations. So we will come back at 10:45. Is that clear? Cool. See you soon.
Thank you.
I'm hoping that councillors are returning. Can we all put our cameras back on, please? One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm missing 2. Councillor Hulse. Oh yes, and Councillor Cooper, of course, is off screen. Councillor Hulse, is he in the list of councillors back on board? I wouldn't mind if somebody can just check with Councillor Hulse that he's returning to the meeting, please.
He's just emailed and said he's having difficulty connecting. Danielle's going to work with him now.
Thank you. Thanks for that support.
Could I suggest that we adjourn for another 5 minutes till he's here?
The problem is that he may not be able to rejoin and we could be delaying for unknown period.
To continue a debate of this degree, something totally different from what we had voted on before, without giving all councillors the opportunity to be here.
I understand what you're saying, Councillor Deeming, and it is a problem, I agree. However, at this stage, we haven't yet got a motion moved and seconded, and as you can tell, trying to delay tactics to see if you can get everybody present, but it is a problem with electronic meetings. I see Councillor Golightly's left the room. There she is. In the interest of the meeting, I think I will have to carry on. So, Councillor Peters, in the break, there was a recommendation has been crafted, and Emily has got it. And if she can share her screen, it will mean that it's up for public record. Are you able to do that, please, Emily? Yes, Councillor Holt's great.
Yeah, thank you.
We're just waiting for the staff to share the screen, but in the interim, I can read out the recommendation. Is that one, the Whangarei District Council to comprise the Mayor elected at large and 12 councillors elected under the ward system, specifically 10 councillors elected district-wide and 2 Māori ward councillors elected district-wide. 2, the Whangarei District Council be divided into 2 wards consisting of the following: Whangarei District General Ward, represented by 10 General Ward councillors; Whangarei District Māori Ward, represented by 2 Māori Ward councillors; and 3 no community boards to be established. Councillor Peters was moving.
Can I just make one minor point? Can I just make one minor point that we just have to, that I've noticed as you've read the recommendation out, Your Worship? We need to just insert that the Whangarei District Council's final proposal will comprise of this. Otherwise, you are resolving something else.
So
we will just put the words the final proposal after Whangarei District Council.
Thank you. Emily, hopefully that's clear. So the Whangarei District Council final proposal for the 2022 election, local government election. I think we need to include all of those words as well to comprise the Mayor.
So for the final proposal, we will put all the legislative requirements into the actual recommendation.
Yes, thank you. So that's moved by Councillor Peters. And
Councillor Chronicle will second that.
Thank you, Councillor Chronicle.
Can I
now
have the screen? Yep.
Councillor Peters, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am in favour of us going with one ward because of the number of rational arguments that were made by submitters that this would be of advantage. There are some points for which which people have made against it, and I also take those into consideration. But I think in overall, actually having a councillors elected at large is a smarter, better way of doing the business because at the end of the day, we represent all of the people. We can find mechanisms to balance out the needs of rural populations, and I believe we're smart enough to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillors, just before I move on to debate Dale, can I check with you around the numbers for if the council were a total of 13, have we got that split correct with 10 plus 2 plus the mayor? Does that meet the criteria for the representative model?
Yes, anything between 8 and 13 councillors in total will generate 2 Māori. So if you've got 12, it'll still be 10 and 2 under that criteria.
Thanks for that. I just wanted to double check. So councillors, open to debate. Councillor Innes.
I'd like to move an amendment, Your Worship. I'd like to move an amendment that we hold to staff recommendation.
That would be the default position, Councillor Innes, should this fail. So I don't think it's necessary to move an amendment to that effect at this stage. So am I correct in that? I'll just double check with staff on as a recommendation for that.
Apologies, what was the question?
The Councillor Innes was proposing an amendment to the motion around the proposed number of councillors, but my understanding is that with the motion on the table to be debated, if it failed, then we would continue through with the staff recommendations, which is no change to the initial proposal.
That is my understanding as well. Yep.
Okay. So debate on the motion. Councillor Innes, did you wish to speak to
that? Thank you, Your Worship. The review we've got at present relates to Māori representation, and that's why we're currently looking at the review. I think what's more important at this point in time is that local government is undergoing substantial reform. And part of that reform is looking at the review of local government, and that is its structure and representation. There will be a concept of that put forward by the end of next month. It seems to me that one of the arguments that's been placed at the moment in local government is local representation. And that is very much looking at community involvement, community representation. We're fortunate now to have Māori representation around the table. So I really see that this is misplaced. We really need to hold where we are at the moment and look towards the local government reform and the review of that, because there are substantial changes in the structure of local government through the three waters and also through the review of the RMA. I feel that our energy should be placed in the review of local government. And ideally, I see that there probably needs to be community boards to get that local representation. Less councillors, but I think that's really the subject of the local government review. I'm also mindful of the submissions we've received, and a majority of them were towards what we have. I think it was 31 submitters. Then the experience that I have in terms of a ward councillor, the reason why the Whangarei Heads ward was brought about was the fact that it was initially in the Hikurangi coastal, and the distance travelling to be at those meetings and for what I would consider one of the key components, access to elected representatives, is really difficult. I think community of interest and also access to elected representatives is important. I can't see passing a motion that would have councillors elected at large, but no community boards takes that out. I personally feel that the current system where we are at this point in time, bringing on board Māori representation and then looking to this local government review that will be in front of us within the next month. I just think it's premature. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Innes. Councillor Cutforth, then Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just following on from Councillor Innes, I guess I draw quite a different conclusion from the changes that are coming for local government. And I think, as he has said, we are in a period of transition to a different system and a different way of operating. And I think moving to at large is demonstrating a reflection that we recognise that change is coming and that we're wanting to keep ahead of that, I guess. I think the debate we've had just over the last hour or so really demonstrates the difficulties we've got at the moment of trying to shoehorn people into rural and urban divisions. Clearly, Whangarei is a growing urban centre. And even in our current rural, what we call our rural wards, excuse my R's, we've got communities which are clearly not rural. If you look at what's happening in the Ruakaka, One Tree Point, Waipu area, clearly those developments cannot be construed as rural. They are urban developments, and people in those areas don't feel like they're living in the country. They now feel like they're living in, if you like, an urban area, or if you like, a subdivision now of the broader Whangarei area. So I think we are in a period of transition, and I think Carol's amendment or motion, and I congratulate her on moving it, really reflects that. The other thing I think is we are elected to represent all ratepayers, and the ward system, and particularly having, I think, small rural wards, really, I think, can hold us back from that, because, and I feel that too, even as a Denby ward councillor, because you end up often feeling you're being put in a position where you need to be parochial. You need to represent accurately the views of the people who are supporting you or voting for you or live in your area. And it also, I think, can pull us down into an operational level that more and more we need to get out of. More and more we need to be above that in governance roles, rather than worrying about the representing our ratepayers who have got a pothole on this particular road or whatever. Those are staff issues. And I think moving to a wider system of representation does really help councillors understand and be a lot more clear about their governance role over the whole district. So I unlike Greg, I see this as a really good move in terms of a transition, and I'd really urge councillors to support this, because I think it's something also that Whangarei people support, and I'm taking that from even the submissions we had around the idea of one urban ward. People understood that the divisions on the map are artificial, and they supported that, and I think this is just an extension of that. So I'm very happy to support the motion on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cutforth. I've got Councillor Cooper, then Councillor Reid.
Thank you very much. For me, this is a real line call, and I see very much the advantages and understand the advantages that the submitters to the one ward are seeking. For a start, you could argue there is greater vote for all councillors rather than just one vote stuck out in your rural ward. There's also the argument of perhaps the calibre of people may be higher, and I say that as a rural ward candidate. So, you know, I wouldn't want people to think I'm having a go at rural ward councillors. There's also the advantage of being able to think more strategically, but I think, and Councillor Murphy did mention that, but I think if you are going to have fewer councillors than they are at large, community wards would have to be part of the equation. I don't agree when people say, and Councillor Murphy just mentioned it, that places like Waipu and Ruakaka feel that they want to be part of an urban ward. And as the Bream Bay councillor with both Ruakaka and Waipu in my ward, I can categorically say that while, yes, they feel urban, they do not feel part of the city centre or the urban ward. They feel that they have special or different needs and that they want representation. I guess also with and like Councillor Innes, I feel we're fortunate to have Maori around the table now in the form of Maori wards. The same argument applies for the rural people and for the ward system where they have the desire to be heard because they do feel that they have different points of view and different requirements. So for that reason, while I can see the advantages of Councillor Peters' motions, and I congratulate her for putting it forward, I will not be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. I think you were referring to Councillor Cutforth's comments as opposed to Councillor Murphy, but I appreciate. So I've got Councillor Reid, then Councillor Benny.
Easy mistake to make.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have to admit I'm a little stunned here. I don't see too many urban farmers, but I do see an awful lot of people moving out of town to try and not be urban, and lifestyle blocks are becoming more and more prevalent, especially out my way. This one ward thing is, why don't we just wait and see? We've gone through a whole process, and looking at this iPad I've got in front of me here, there's very, very few people want one ward, like about 3 from what I can see. And it just does not add up to me that 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people should have sway over the silent majority, being the other 98,000 people. So yeah, I really can't see where this has come from, and I certainly don't have any space for it within my thoughts for the future for our district. So I'll be voting against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Binning.
Yeah, so this is what I was trying to get through in my earlier comments, and so I've given this a lot of thought, and I've changed my mind completely on this in the last little bit, and I think today's discussion has helped me with that as well, to see how divided we are, how we're trying to move boundaries to ensure that that areas who physically aren't part of an area, to try and make them fit into an equation, how that doesn't work. I see our decision making in a lot of the things that we've made recently, big decisions, how divided we are. I don't see it as you have to be a farmer to represent the farmers. The same as you don't have to be a part of anything to represent a particular people. So I see this. I see Councillor Peters' motion as being a really positive. I hear Councillor Ernest, and it pains me to go against what he says, because we're on the same track with a lot of things. But I think that the reform of local government, we are looking at that. If this was a month later, it would be fine, but it's not. It's now. So we've got to make the decision based on now. And that reform of local government, we don't know what's going to happen with that. So I think this is a really progressive move. I think it allows better decision making. I think it allows an elector from Bream Bay or Hikurangi or Kamo to vote for the councillors they want on there, whether it's a particular vocation or anything that they've got. It allows somebody to vote for, as they do with the mayor. So the mayor now represents the Bream Bay ward as well, and there's no issues with that. I think the Bream Bay ward accept that. So yeah, I'm supportive of this. I think it's a positive move, and I've changed my mind completely on this, and I think it's a good way to represent our region, our district moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Binning. Councillor Golightly.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've been so against a one ward for so long now, as I know that you all know, but it has been really interesting going through this process, and as Councillor Benny has just sort of stated too, this one ward now is starting to make sense for me, especially with joining, now that we're sort of joining the two wards to urban. I just sort of don't really see a reason why we shouldn't all be one ward. So I'm half there, but I'm possibly going to support Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Councillor Golightly. Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I definitely support Councillor Peters' recommendation, and that's for a couple of reasons. Councillor Benny already covered a couple of them, but just to remind councillors, if you live in a ward like, say, Hikurangi Coastal or Mangakahia or Whangarei Heads, you can only vote for one councillor plus the mayor. So the opportunity to actually be able to vote for a whole group of people to represent you, I think it's more representative. It's actually it's a more of an opportunity to select a council that you feel represents you. Sometimes people in some wards are really limited. There might only be one or two candidates who are standing, and they're very limited in who they actually can vote for. Obviously, this would fit better with STV, and that's not on the table at all. But I think, I mean, I see where Councillor Innes is coming from. Yeah, there is change ahead, but we don't know what that looks like. We don't know, how long that will take to kick in. So I think we have to make the decision today based on what we think, would work for our community. The other thing I wanted to say is that at the moment we've got councillors who don't live solely in their wards. We've got councillors who were elected in one ward but who spend some of the time or live in another ward. So I think it really is irrelevant. And what I get excited about is when we do our long-term plan consultation meetings, we have usually quite a good group of councillors and staff who go out to those meetings held all over the district, and they are so effective. Imagine if we had, a group of councillors who were elected at large. You would be expected, and you would want to, for example, attend an AGM in Hikurangi. So instead of just Councillor Martin and myself turning up, you might have 6 or 7 councillors there to really hear what local people are saying. I think it would be incredible. So I think it would be more coherent. It would be, you would be able to work at a more strategic level. I just think it's more relevant. So I definitely support the at-large option.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Any other, Councillor Martin, then Councillor Deeming.
Yes, well, I can't remember how many times this subject has come up and up and up and up, and a few people are starting to consider changing. We had the placemaking in Hikurangi. No one else turned up but Anna and I. Occasionally one other person might turn up. We need to make sure that we have differing views from all over the district. The problem with one person, or one ward, is that a group could get together, they could get all of their supporters to block vote for all of the list of people that they want and dominate the situation. So you can have somebody with a big name leading it in a big deal group and a whole lot get in there together. At least with this system, the people all over the district get to have a say. And now that we've got the county council offices in the Kamo ward, the central city ward, after today's discussion, it's not going to make any difference. It's not going to make my tea curdle. But the fact is that we actually are representing everybody now. We get elected on the ward system so that we have a cross spread of people over the district to represent the people. And then we get in there and we work together on difficult issues. And we have a few of these political type ones that come up that some people appear to have an obsession with. And it does not change the fact that a lot of people get represented by people from the rural area. Heaps of my stuff is in there. I have stuff at Waipu, out the heads, all over the place. That's just what we do. And I think it's critical that we keep the ward system, we keep going how we are. Just the way it's always been this way, so that you had fair representation from all of the people all over the district.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Deeming.
I think it's great that there's so many councillors who are prepared to give up every night of the week to attend community meetings throughout the district. That will be fantastic, because if they don't all attend all of these meetings, then we are not going to get the information back from all the corners of our district. There's at least 5 monthly in Bream Bay that Ken and I both attend every meeting, or practically every meeting, plus all the other interim meetings that you're asked to go along to, just to lend a bit of a council view to them. So that's really cool. I'm glad that so many people feel able to go to meetings from Bland Bay to Waipu Cove. I totally agree with what Councillor Martin has just been saying about the representation across the district. You could so easily get a dedicated group with one interest that can make a lot of noise, whether it be an urban sector, a rural sector, an environmental sector, whatever sector, and they can get themselves elected as a group. And you are not going to have a cross flavour across the district of all of the different aspects that all of the elected councillors bring to the table now. We don't agree on a lot of issues. We argue through a lot of issues, but we do get a pretty good consensus of opinion from throughout our district. I just have to say this. that I am actually quite upset that after having gone through this debate, we now find ourselves going through the debate again after going out to our community for submissions. Had there been a huge groundswell of opinion come back that said they wanted change, okay, but there hasn't been. So what we are now doing is saying, yes, we are a council that can never make up our mind. We decided on one aspect, we went out, we consulted with you, and now we don't give a damn what your opinion is. We have a different opinion, we've changed our minds, and now we'll have to start all over again. Obviously, if we go out with this, it goes to the local government commissioner, who will make a decision anyway. So I'm absolutely flabbergasted that we're even going through this process.
Thank you, Councillor Deeming. Councillor Connor.
Yes, thank you very much. Just turn the mute off. With this whole situation, I mean, we just have to look at the last debate about doing all the little divisions of 10%, negative, whatever, this, that, and the other. It doesn't really matter. We're all people of Whangarei. We're elected by our ward to be for the whole of Whangarei. I support everybody around here as much as I possibly can. There's people that are even in my own ward that don't support me for that different reasons. And you can just do whatever you want. You can make any reactions you want. It's up to you. The potholes will always be there, just as the people will always contact us about the potholes. The fact that we did not submit, allow people have a direct question for the at-large option was the reason there wasn't too many more people submitting on it. Though the fact that people put the submissions in about at-large was there. The fact that the people that came and spoke to council, that they spoke quite at large at the at-large one, and the support of that. The silent majority, hell, we've had 60 people submit on this. We're trying to do this for almost 100,000 people, and we had 60 people submit on this. We need people to actually get into this, and I'm not saying it will make more people stand up, but it's one of those things that if we support everybody as much as we possibly can, we get to a wider reach of people. Right now, the ward system and the people that are in the wards don't necessarily support exactly who they are in it. It wasn't consulted on. Right now as well, the mayor gets directed with most of the hate, like, oh, she made this, that she did that. When we directly, only if we are in our little segment, we may get a little bit of hate directed at us. It does bring more responsibility to everybody, and I forgot the word for it, but to make sure we're accountable to the whole district for the decisions we make. I support rural, I support urban, I support environment, I support business, etc. There's so many different little sects. There's so many things that are online these days. We've had up to 30 people watching online from so many different places maybe in the country. We're all in different areas around town. We're all being able to connect this way as well. In respect of the fact that there could be a majority get in, well, you could already get that with the likes of little party groups that could put themselves into each group anyway and be able to vote for. I mean, there's one in particular, I can't remember the name right now, but that we've had people in the past try to do groups and get it in. With the fact that you can get it out to a wider reach of people will create a broader spread of those type of things as well. Right now, as Councillor Murphy, I think, has said, you're limited to one vote for one ward, whereas, hell, you could have 10 votes. You could actually make up that without STV. It's a different story, but it's one of those, Go Whangarei is that one, that the little party group that was there. You could have vote on 10 people around the council, well, 11 with the mayor, or for that fact that the Maori wards would have 2 and the mayor 2. So it's one of those areas where you get more of a voice to adhere to your changes. And even with the fact that you have to go around to different meetings and whatnot, you don't always have to go to every single one. You can get a group of people that say, oh, we've got this meeting coming up, would you like to go to it? That you'd be able to get people to go to. I already have people from different wards coming to me and asking for things, and it's not all necessarily this particular ward. There are so many changes that have happened over the years. The technology is upgraded, the connectivity is upgraded, the ability to actually connect with people has grown significantly. Yes, there are changes that are happening, but it's another thing that we can actually come together a lot more, actually work with everyone, and actually support everyone. And those who support us will put us here or not. It's up to them. But we don't necessarily need to have an arbitrary line on a map to say, this is the people that you can get voted in by. I support it at large.
Thank you, Councillor Connor. Any further debate? Councillor Hulse.
Thank you, Your Worship, and very interesting conversation going on here. I support what Councillor Deeming and Councillor Martin were saying earlier on, that we actually spent, I think it was 4 workshops working out what our proposal was that we're going to go out in public consultation on. And it seems quite alarming now we're getting a big swing the other way. And, we debated at the time, we actually had negotiated our way through it, and we went out with our proposal that people did submit on. But just tracking a bit of history here, people got this belief that if you go to district-wide, one ward, that you're going to get a representation of people. History would actually show you that it doesn't quite happen that way. In one case, in the Whangarei Council, before amalgamation happened, there's four councils lived down one street. One street, not one area, one street. And that's what happens. And just, we're in a unique situation here because our Whangarei District Council is made up of an amalgam of a lot of former boroughs. We used to have a Carmo borough. We used to have the Hikurangi Town Board, the Whangarei Town Board. And the promise to those people at the time when they went in to negotiate for amalgamation was that it retained local representation. And that's what led to the ward system. And so it's very, very important to me, particularly, that we retain a bit of history, but we stay to our word at the time. And right through the transition from local government into our now Whangarei District Council, they had a transition meeting, transition committee that is made up of the then County Council and Whangarei District Council, and they reinforced the need to retain wards. And that's the history behind it. It'd be great if we could get a representation right across the area. It'd be great if you could do that. But history does not lean that way. I think it would have been more support for the motion if we went down and reduced the numbers down to probably 5 or 6 councillors, not retaining it at such very similar numbers we've got today, and made it a board structure. And in that way, you could argue that you're going for a more nimble, more active, more proactive governing body. But at the moment, we've consulted on a ward system. We've had support on a ward system with the council to allow that to go out. We've heard submissions that supported the ward systems, and now at the last minute we've got this. And it'll be not a good look for this council to have a split vote on this. I think that's the way it's heading. I think that's really, really detrimental to us, and mainly because people are looking for us for leadership. We've got Maori inclusion now. We've got Maori wards coming in mandatory now, and it's a good move because we know where they are. We know what the system is. That led to this representation review, and as Councillor Innes said right from the start, that is the main trigger for this representation review. That's been accommodated quite well in our proposal that we've been discussing this morning. And after submissions, basically support that. So I'm going to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hulse. We don't actually have an amendment. It is, we've just got the motion.
Yeah. Well.
Any further debate? Councillor Cocorilla.
And finally, lastly, I'd like to speak, and I'd like to say I agree with the previous speakers. Councillor Hulse has raised a very, very important aspect, and that was a promise that we made to a lot of those rural councils and rural county boards. And that is something that we need to uphold to our district. A lot of people may say, oh, that's very old-fashioned, it's not going with the future. Well, actually it is. It's upholding our community to the faith and belief that we are looking after them. I'm very, very concerned when councillors turn around and say, oh, it won't matter. We'll all get elected. No, there's no guarantee of anyone getting elected. There's no guarantee because it comes down to, as I believe Councillor Martin has many times said to me, a popularity contest. Look, we're always at the will of the people. And if we connect with our people in our ward, then they will vote for us. The problem will be, as Councillor Hulse has already highlighted, we end up with 15, or sorry, I should rephrase that, 10 people from the urban ward and none from rural. The percentage of people voting is majority urban. Even though Councillor Cooper gets a higher percentage in his ward and Councillor Deeming gets a higher percentage in her ward, the vast minority of people who are voting are urban. So be well aware, if you want to have the one ward situation, the majority of them, from statistics, shows they will all be urban and rural will be forgotten.
Thank you, Councillor Cockerilla. I will be supporting the motion for a number of reasons. One, I won't be standing for the mayoralty at the next election, so I can kind of put this just in a dispassionate way. I can look at this and evaluate it without any thoughts about the next election. And you can actually look at this and think about what's best for the district. The Councillor Hulse has pointed out this might be a split vote. One of the huge advantages in the recommendation is that it is a council of 13. So that in itself is a real, from my perspective, an advantage of having an uneven number. Therefore, you will get a result unless somebody's missing from a council meeting. I've heard this statement a lot of times. If we always do what you've always done, you'll get the same result. And I often hear that from some of the people who are saying, let's stick with the status quo. So I guess that's my challenge is to say, this is a chance for us to do something different. And I've, in my consistent voting for change, I've wanted to have a change to the voting system, the single transferable vote. That was did not succeed. It's still first past the post. When we were talking about the proposals to go out, we did talk about a smaller council and community boards as a way of getting a strategic sort of council with community boards at that local level well connected. We all signed an oath to do what is best for the people of our district. Every councillor in the future will do exactly the same. When you and I do sincerely believe that the ability for people to vote for a large number of people, it's been highlighted by one or two councillors that at the moment we've got two wards that have only one representative. So the people in those wards get to vote for one councillor and the mayor. And we've currently, the most you can vote for is 4. So under this proposal, everybody across the district who's not on the Māori ward, in the general ward, will be able to vote for 10 plus the mayor. And that's a really good sense that people will have that they've had influence over the council that is elected to represent them and their interests. So I am keen on the change. I accept that there weren't that many submitters, but of course, if we had gone out with this as a proposal, we would have had a lot more submission on it. So it's a catch-22, and we had to put out an initial proposal that met the plus or minus 10%, all of those things, and we've debated at length around the issues that created for the ward system, where you've got communities of interest and we're having to kind of tweak those boundaries. So it wasn't ideal regardless, the initial proposal. So I'm really keen. The Māori ward will be across the whole district, and the general ward will be across the whole district, and the mayor at large. So everybody's pretty much on the same level playing field for what they're doing. So commend Councillor Peters for putting this up as an option for us to consider today. Councillor Golightly, I see your hand is up. Do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. It is a just to clarify, because this looks like it's going to be a split with community boards. Did I hear Dale say previous that we do not have to go back to consultation if we want to introduce community boards? That's one question. And the second one is, if we do have a ward, if we do have we're just at large, is that then saying that we must have community boards? I just want to be clear before I vote.
With regard to community boards, your initial proposal stated no community boards, and there have been submissions made around community boards, so they're on the table to be reconsidered, because it as actually was a statement in the initial proposal that there be none. And your question, what was that again?
Thanks, Dale. It was just around community boards. I just sort of wanted to make sure that if we are going into the one district, one ward system, I'm not a fan of community boards, so I guess I'm just kind of getting
lost connectivity.
Thanks, Dale. It does make it tricky. Perhaps, Emily, are you able to answer that query of Councillor Golightly around the community boards?
I think the motion is that no community, but there's no community boards is part of the motion.
That is the motion.
The motion is no community boards.
If you go district-wide, you're not compelled to establish community boards, if that's your question. You're not compelled to, yeah.
Thank you, Dale. Councillor Peters, your right of reply.
Thank you. I do think that going at large is strategic. I do think that we are quite able to make a comprehensive list of all of the consultations that are or supporting meetings that everybody's going to and dividing them up. It's quite possible to do that. I think we can both represent areas and be at large. The idea that people would put forward a block of voters and they'd all get in is actually against what has happened traditionally in Whangarei. People have put these things forward and they haven't happened. So, that one's just a red herring. So there are changes coming, and I think that strategically we should look at this because it's the future. I'm hearing what Phil's saying, that historically he would rather we stuck with our promises to the county councils, and I'm not sure whether that's the case. I'm not sure how those people historically would think of what we're doing. And I'm sure there were a lot of people who were against the amalgamation of the Auckland City Council, for example. We're a much smaller body. I feel like strategically we have to be collectively, we've taken, as people have mentioned, we've taken the vote to represent all of our people. And people, as with Councillor Connor, people ring me up from all over the district, including Whangarei, where I have lots of connections. So yeah, so those are my arguments. I do think that that it is a good strategic move to vote for this.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillors, the right of reply has been had. I'm going to ask for a show of hands for those in support of the motion. Those in favour, raise your hands. I'm going to call these out. I'll call for a division. So I'm going to Councillor Golightly, Councillor Peters, Councillor Benny, Councillor Murphy, Councillor Connor, Councillor Cutforth, and myself. Those against? Councillor Cockerillo, Councillor Deeming, Councillor Reid, Councillor Hulse, Councillor Martin, Councillor Innes, and Councillor Cooper. Can I have a count of that? Sorry,
It was 7 for and 7 against, Your Worship.
Oh, great.
Sorry.
Worship.
Councillors, I have the option of using a casting vote or not. If I don't, then there is, Carolyn, can you give me some advice on what that means?
19.1 of standing orders requires decision decided by the majority of members. So the status quo, I think, would remain. There's no change to the staff recommendation. Council initial proposal to retain the ward system. So I guess that's the status quo. If Emily's got anything different to that, she might like to jump in here.
Yep, I've got nothing to add to that.
Councillors, despite the fact that I supported the amendment, I think you're right, Councillor Hoss, the motion. The fact that we went out with an initial proposal and that we had submissions based on that, I'm not going to use my casting vote. And I'm probably going to live to regret it. This was my one chance to change the course of the next election. I think I'll leave it up for the next mayor to go through a representation review and effect change. So reluctantly, I will not use my casting vote, and which means that it's with status quo. So we that means that we do continue with the ward system. So we'll move to item 3.2, which is the mixed model of electing councillors. Of course, that's the staff recommendation is no change to the initial proposal. That was whether or not we could have mixed with urban and elected at large, etc. So that is there any desire to change that? Doesn't look like that. So 3.3, retaining a ward system but cutting the number of rural councillors to 4 and increasing the number of urban councillors to 6 plus 2 with the mayor still elected at large. Again, the staff analysis is there and the recommendation is no change to the initial proposal. Any other changes to that? Okay. So that leaves us, sorry, I've got a pussycat who's playing with my screen. We do now have a final recommendation that will need to be moved and seconded.
Just before you do that, Your Worship, did we need to go back to community boards?
I think that was covered in the staff recommendation that no, what number is that, Carolyn?
I've lost that.
2.9.
2.9.
Thanks, Nicolene. I missed that, didn't I? So 2.9, do you agree that no community boards be established? I think we had covered that off, because then we moved on to the one ward and we had Councillor Peters' motion. So I'm pretty sure that that is already, because she, I recall Councillor Peters was saying she was could that be covered in the next proposal? So I'm comfortable that we had covered that off.
Thank you. And 2.3, we had, do you agree with the ward boundary changes for the existing Green Bay ward? Need to go back and debate that, or are you comfortable with that?
Thank you. I think in light of all of the other discussions that we've got, we're comfortable with that. I'm not seeing any. Councillor Connor.
It was just a question on the whole process of this. So we've been debating this now. This is then going to go out to not a consultation, but it's an open time for people to be able to put a complaint or a, what's the next process after this, please? Just for.
Okay, so the on the 7th of September, we will have a council meeting with the final proposal based on the deliberations that we've made today. The staff will bring forward the final proposal, which we then vote on, and that goes out for a process of people being able to lodge an appeal to it or make submissions. Dale, are you able to just outline the process for that? Or Emily?
Yes, so following the council meeting on the 7th of September, a public notice is then made on the 10th of September, providing for a further 4-week appeal objection period, which will run to the 11th of October. And as I said earlier, if we just get one of those, or we're outside the plus or minus 10%, which we are likely to be, then everything gets bundled up after the 11th of October and sent down to the Local Government Commission for their consideration and determination, which probably will involve hearings in Whangarei.
Thank you, Dan.
So what, within regards to that then gives people the opportunity to speak whatever way they feel for it. Like, would they side with like the decision there, or is there a way that they would kind of, well, not lean, but make their decision? Is there a way to explain how they'd make their decision?
Yes, in the public notice under the legislation, it says the public notice must incorporate any amendments that have been made and state both the reasons for the amendments and the reasons for any rejection of submissions. So we have to be quite descriptive in our public notice, reasons why we've changed tact or made amendments. And then it gives the right for people then to make an objection or appeal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And the final recommendation is that Council note the resolutions made at today's meeting on the matters contained in the submissions report attachment 1 will be used to inform development of the representation review final proposal for the 2022 triennial local government elections. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cockerillo is seconding. Those in favour, please raise your hands. That's pretty well everybody. Thank you. I think that brings us to the end of the agenda. Am I correct in that? No other items on the agenda? Dale.
I just earlier on text the Local Government Commission about that issue of anonymous submissions. My question to them was, how do you handle, or what advice can you provide on submissions received anonymously? Are they valid and do they have equal weighting? The response I got back pretty immediate, which is good. All other things considered, I'd treat them equally. For example, nothing in the Act requires specific details or that they actually live in the district. So I thought that was relevant to pass on. So we treat anonymous ones as on an equal footing. And of course, submitters don't even have to live in the district.
Thank you, Dale. That's really helpful for us. Appreciate that. So councillors, that brings us to the end of our council meeting today. Thank you all for your attendance and attention to this really important aspect of what we do. So I will close the meeting. And Councillor Martin.
Yeah, could I have that in writing, what Dale just said, that anyone from anywhere can make submissions on our plans and stuff?
On our representation review.
Yep, well, it's come straight from the Local Government Commission, but
Yeah.
happy to pass that on.
Yeah, there, thanks. But I just think that's absolutely absurd. We need to have the people in the districts that are being affected. Oh,
And the fact that it can be anonymous would be good.
Okay, thank you, everybody. That is the advice we've received from an authority greater than ours in this area. So I will close the meeting. Thank you, everybody.